We do a lot of events and all also. They come under commercial. So what I deal with is the sports which come under CSR. When you come to CSR, now see we have this whole new paradigm in India now. You might have heard about the new company bill. A lot of companies now, about 8,000 plus companies will come into the CSR now with about 25,000 crore rupees of money. And when you go the history of CSR, like say, CSR means whatever was, it was charity, philanthropy. So sports has always been there. Why? For two, three very simple reasons. One thing is, it's the best mean to join with the community. Because when we wanted to do anything, whether around our factories or as a pan-India programs, this was one thing which came to first. Like I have been in this sector for long, in the development sector. What I have seen is even politicians, I won't name them, but just go to Kurukshetra or this area, any MP you call, what they do practically. We have these local sports called the Dangal and all. So because they do it primarily for a reason, because it connects you to the people. You get the people, you get a platform, people join you. I think that's the one major reason why people have been into sports mainly. And second thing is, to some extent, it's also cheap compared to other things. Whether you make a school or have a tournament, two are different things. And also when it comes to sports, it's very easy to organize it because there are a lot of federations, a lot of things happening. So rather than having your own program, it's better to join a program. Go and join a program, sponsor it, or help them with, help the players and all. Like say you get that branding and all. That's why they have been. And lot of it, especially I stayed for 4 years in Bastar. There's a lot of mining companies are there. And they try to promote the culture. And the culture also means sports there. Because they have been so much linked with all those things here, right from the environment up to the entertainment. Everything is so linked in their life. Like say, you can't separate those two things. That's how it goes about there. And a lot of companies are into CSR. We hope that more companies will come into now with these things. And as even the chambers, even the ISC and others, all are promoting these things. I think it's the right time to have such type of discussion where now we can take it 2 steps forward, not even 1 step forward. And luckily we have a lot of people who have come with a sports background themselves. So most of us come with a sports background, and given an opportunity which government is providing now, people are very proactive. I think this is the right time to have such type of discussion and such type of workshop. Thanks, Nikhil.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Upadhyay. Now, as we go on from one speaker to the other, I'm just reminding again, please keep making some points, and as the discussions go on, maybe after 2 or 3 speakers, I would like people to start raising their hand as well. Because then we'll start a process of cross-fertilization, so that I also want that the 3rd and the 4th speakers also begin to get a sense of the house as to what you guys are thinking. Now, for example, a couple of triggers with FICCI, I would say, because we at the IIC have just recently signed an MOU with FICCI. Now, the IIC is the apex organization which would be promoting and enabling CSR in the country, especially with respect to the New Companies Act. You're all aware of that. There's a section 135 which is part of this new act. So a couple of questions to FICCI from your side could be triggered in terms of FICCI is a huge demand aggregator. There are so many member companies. What kind of things can a FICCI do to connect corporate CSR spending to sports and to development, whether as a business model or as a social model? Think and maybe come up with some questions. Next we go to Eric.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. I wanted to come at this, I guess, from the specific point of view of a sports company and how we deal with CSR. And I want to speak briefly just on 3 topics, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. First, I wanted to talk about what is the underlying philosophy that we take as a corporate towards CSR as a sports company. Then I want to talk a little bit about how that philosophy manifests itself in global programs that we run. And then finally, just touch a little bit on how that manifests itself locally here in India, what we're doing. So in general, I think as a sports company, we have a very unique perspective to understand the influence and the power that sports has when we talk about CSR and when we talk about development, which is of course the very topic of your program here this week. We see the power that sports has to be a unifier. I'm reminded of this every evening when I go home and turn on the Winter Olympics, and you see people from all over the world, different nations, different religions, different ages, competing in a magnificent way. So one of the things we as a sponsor of these types of events see is the power that sports has. We also see the power that sports has in individual development. We watch very closely the impact that sports has on the youth in particular, and some of the self-confidence, the discipline that it teaches. And then finally, we see the massive impact that sports has as a community builder. Again, as a sports company, because we sponsor so many of these events, we sponsor athletes, and of course through our CSR activities, we get to see this very closely. So what this does is this overlying, front row seat that we have allows us to form a particular philosophy on CSR. And we carry this out through a global initiative called the Adi Dassler Fund. Adi Dassler was the founder of Adidas nearly a century ago. And we've set this fund up, and it's really an umbrella that houses all of our CSR activities. And it has a couple key principles. First of all, it must be focused on sport. The activities must focus on sport. Second, it must be targeted toward children. Third, it must be sustainable. We're not interested in one-off activities. We like to engage with organizations for the long term. And then finally, the main principle is that it has to be employee-based. So with these principles, we've rolled out programs in over 25 countries. And it does everything from build sports facilities for disadvantaged kids so that they have the opportunity to engage with sports. It has to do with contracting and training coaches so that kids have access to high quality coaching. Also, there's a huge amount of volunteerism. Thousands and thousands of Adidas employees across the world engage with multiple NGOs and different entities, donating not only their time but also money, etc. I happen to be engaged in a couple of these in my years at Adidas. I've had specific activities with a program we have in Africa that again retains and trains coaches and teaches football, and not only football, but it helps to inculcate the life skills that sports, particularly football, teach. Then in my years in China, after the terrible Sichuan earthquake in 2008, we rebuilt a lot of sporting facilities because we realized there were a lot of orphans that were created, and there's kids whose whole worlds were turned upside down. So we undertook to rebuild a lot of sporting facilities, and then we continue to go back year after year and work with the kids and watch them as they rebuild their lives. Finally, let me just touch very briefly on what we're doing here in India. Again, what we're doing here is very much a reflection of the philosophy that I've just described. So for about a decade, so again, the long-term approach, for about a decade, we've partnered with a group called Udayan Care, based here in Delhi.
1 minute, Eric.
Thank you. Udayan Care has, thank you. Udayan Care has 13 homes serving several hundred children. Children that were generally either victims of abuse or otherwise orphaned. And they've created these 13 houses that take them from the very youngest age until they graduate them from school. We started a corporate mentoring program where our employees, hundreds of employees, would go on a monthly basis and work with the kids. We then launched a sports day. In fact, this past weekend, I spent Saturday where we had the annual sports day. We brought all the kids from all the houses together. I brought one of our celebrity athletes, and we played games. We had a regular sports day. We played cricket with the kids. We played football with the kids, awarded a lot of prizes. And now we're taking the next step in this, I guess, journey with this organization where we are...
Time. 30 seconds I'll give you, 30 seconds.
You say where we are actually now taking these kids who have graduated through the whole program and giving them employment opportunities with our company. So sort of rounding out the whole experience. Again, a decade-long experience. Sorry for going late.
Thank you so much, Eric. Big round of applause. Again, I would say a couple of trigger points from my side would be, see, Adidas is a global player. And now with a new CSR agenda in the country, maybe think very creatively as to how we can utilize their expertise, not just in terms of fitness, but also in terms of performances. And especially if you see a country like India, where if you're able to target both fitness and performance at the bottom of the pyramid, and if you see some of our own Olympic champions, etc., they come from very poor families. So this is just to trigger off questions. So just write down the question and we'll collect the slip from you. In fact, we have a question for Mr. Upadhyay. and the person has chosen to remain anonymous, so I'm now going to take his name or the organization. So you can just read out the question and give a very quick answer.
Case studies that Vicky can share, there are plenty of them. Like say you'll see when on others people talk from this thing, what corporates are doing. I'll take it not in terms of CSR, the social responsibility from corporates. What lot of corporates, what they are doing, you'll get the examples. And if you can give your name also, I can send you those case studies also. I think they'll be much better keeping in the time. Thanks a lot.
Good, very good, very good. Huh? So we'll keep doing this kind of a cross-fertilization, because now when somebody asked about case studies, let me tell you, we at the IIC have already started a process of documenting case studies with the IIMs. In fact, currently I am personally in contact with both IIM Ahmedabad as well as IIM Calcutta to develop case studies, and that's the way the Harvard people also teach. I'm sure you know about it, the case study method of training people. Now, we would be very keen if Vicky can share some of those case studies which we can get some professionals to write out for subsequent trainings on CSR, and then they become, role models across the country. Will that be a good idea?
Definitely.
Good, very good, very good. So next, Preeti, can you please take the mic?
Two team sports, football and basketball. And the great challenge was, what do we do? Do we just simply become sponsors? Do we just sponsor players, infrastructure? What do we do? So after a lot of deliberations, we decided that, let's not go back to the government, not ask for a policy, and try and experiment a new model and see if it works and becomes an example for other corporates. So what was the vision? The vision was to spread, popularize sports and make it a way of life. To do that in a big country like India, we needed to improve the infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, it is the main fields, where professional football and basketball is played, playing fields, all kind of infrastructure. Then creating players. There has to be a database of players, and the process, how the players get into the mainstream and how do they get to play with the clubs. Very important grassroots and a youth development program. How to get investment into sports. That's an issue I think my other colleagues will also pick up. How to get the partners like Adidas, Excited, or Nike, or Coke. So the simple answer was, we need to create a business case. And to create a business case, the best option was, we said, let's go to the federations, because they are accountable for running sports in the country. So we went to the All India Football Federation and to the Basketball Federation of India, and we said, we will buy your rights, we'll become your commercial partners, which means that we pay them a rights fee annually, and they give us all the rights to market and develop or popularize their products, which are tournaments at that point of time. So 3.5 years we have been working through the federation to try and do all the points which I said. And through that business case, somehow get to CSR, which I'll do. So what we did, we put aside 1,000 crores, which was a big money, with a very clear vision, this money is not going to come back. A lot of people say you're paying them as a commercial partner, but what is this money doing? This money has professionalized the federation. Tomorrow we are participating in an award function. I hope we win as a federation. We brought processes into the federation. We brought professionals. We got a lot of coaches. I don't know if Wim is here. We brought a technical director, Rob. We bought a lot of people and started making sure that all the existing tournaments in football are alive, like a Federation Cup or a Santosh Trophy or a Nehru Cup, which was not played, and we started activating the state federation. We also started getting the broadcasting into the I-League. We got 10. We started speaking to the clubs. But then we said, this is not, we have to do something more. So we said, okay, we'll get an IPL kind of a model, a tournament for 2 weeks, which will excite, which will have all these elements and which will excite the investors and the broadcasters. And then
One minute.
Okay, and through these franchisees, we'll do youth development and everything. So this is the business case on which we are working. And for the CSR angle is also going. We have Reliance Foundation, I don't need to introduce. We tied up with NBA. And we said, you take up Kerala and Mumbai, and our target is 50,000 school. We'll fund, let's teach them in small levels doing basketball. We have started school and college league through the federation, and definitely we are supporting. So what we are saying is, first we brought investment, and we are making these federations accountable and self-sufficient. A very, very different model, maybe not fitting into the real CSR definition, but definitely I personally feel that this is what we need to do, and my appeal is more corporates, please come and everybody take charge of each sports. Thank you.
Good, very good. A big round of applause. Preeti, in fact, when I heard Preeti's model of a joint venture, and in fact, within the new corporate law, this is the section 135, there is something called creating shared value, which is the Michael Porter model. And where we are trying to tell corporates that if you're spending money where you are also generating some business wealth out of a social need, as long as you're able to quantify upfront the real underprivileged beneficiaries, you can actually bill it to your 2% CSR spending. So as you go along, Preeti, and you start generating more profits and you fall within the qualification parameters, you can connect with the IIC and we'll help you go ahead on that, so that your innovative model doesn't get lost. Now we have a question for Eric as well as for Preeti from, what is her name?
Young India Fellowship.
Yeah. So could you just read out the question and then try and give an answer?
So the question is, the corporate sector is doing a lot for grassroots sports and professional sports in India. However, unfortunately, for a long time, they have ignored sports at the junior level between 13 and 18, and this leads to a large amount of talent to leave sports. How can we change this? So, very good question. We're doing our part to address this. It's a very timely question. So immediately after I finished the sports day with Udayan Kher on Sunday, I raced across town to watch the final match of an under-16 football tournament that we had sponsored for the weekend. We sponsor FC Bayern Munich in Germany, the football club. Their folks came here for the weekend. We sponsored a team Pan-India tournament here in Delhi. The Bayern folks then chose 10 of the best players who will then go to Munich and participate in a global football match there.
Pass the paper to her.
Yes, you can see this.
You read it? All right.
So I agree with you. There's still a lot that needs to be done. We try to sponsor tournaments like this. We sponsor something called the Subroto Cup, which is another Pan-Asia football tournament that we're very, very active in. So point well taken. We're doing our part in sponsoring some of these tournaments for these teenage kids.
Good, good, good. And Preeti, what is your take on this?
A lot of work being done through the federation. One thing I forgot and very relevant, the most important thing we did from the federation was to make a 10-year plan, which is called Lakshya, and I request everybody, please go to the AFI website and read. That's the, and it talks about how, children are identified at the age of 12, and it's a pan-India program. It's already in progress, and there was a presentation in the morning on that. And we are also working with Coke on Coca-Cola Cup, trying to go to the school. So a lot of work is going. We need a lot of corporates, and we need a lot of NGOs to come. And I can be contacted. I'm in Delhi.
Good,
so work is happening. I'm sorry if we have not been able to communicate to a lot of people, but I think after this conference, the sports family is big, so we'll find a way to get connected.
So Rashi, does this in the first go satisfy your question a little bit, or you need to drill it down further? Good, good. So we'll not interject right now. What I'll say to you, because a lot of things have to take place, please follow through with both of them. Keep me in the loop and we'll take it forward. All right? We have to follow through. Next is Deval.
First of all, Nikhil, thank you so much for being such a tight timekeeper. I think it's really needed at conferences.
I hope I'm not coming across as offensive, but then, because time is pretty tight.
It's really important, and I'm going to have you moderate some of our conferences as well. As you guys all know, we have 700 million people that live under 300 rupees a day. They don't have access to health, they don't have access to education, they don't have access to clean drinking water. Why should they be playing sport? Why should 18,000 crores, which may be coming from the CSR budget on an annual basis, be given to kids to play when there's so many other basic needs that these children have? Why should India, where, as the speaker said in the last session, sports has not necessarily been part of our DNA as a country, why are we trying to impose Western values into a country where clearly that's not been the case for so many years, especially when we have so many issues? These are questions that have been asked for development programs for many, many years. and they're real questions. They're hard questions, and I think with the 18,000 crores again that are going to be coming in on an annual basis, I think we need to realize that the majority of people that are asking these questions may be the heads of HR or communications in their own company. Therefore, they have limited time and bandwidth to actually focus on effective giving. And they're going to perhaps look at the easier solutions to fund versus the more intangible solutions. At Dasra, both as an organization as well as me personally, for 14 years we've been fighting this sort of uphill battle in convincing philanthropists, corporates, and individuals to give to sports for development programs. Magic Bus was the first organization that we funded 14 years ago, and I vividly remember the investment committee meeting that I had to present the case of why funders should give money to Magic Bus and how difficult of a challenge it was because they asked me these same basic questions. If education is the easiest way out of poverty, then why are we funding a Magic Bus? And if health is the easiest way to slip back into poverty, why are we funding Magic Bus? And I think it's important for everyone here who has a Sports for Development program to realize that it's up to you guys to engage the person on the opposite side of the table, to demonstrate the value of your program and how it links to education, health, and community engagement, not as a one-off, but as an ongoing session. Yes, in a panel that we had just the last session, there was a speaker who asked, why sport and why not education? I think this was asked to one of the organizations. And I think it's really clear for Sports for Development NGOs to first realize and more importantly express that you're not saying it's an either or game. No one here is saying we shouldn't be going to school, we shouldn't be investing in healthcare, we shouldn't be having babies in hospitals. We're saying that you should do sport to actually teach communities on how to do X, Y, and Z, and how in essence, the engagement model, as Pratik put it in the last session, of sport is critical to build these communities. So instead of sort of talking about the statistics of CSR, I think it's really important when you guys position what you do to talk about the linkages to health, to education, to the sector focus that the corporate has sitting in front of you, because clearly your programs are vital and integral in the development of youth and children across the country. But if you're not able to make that case at the very first minute of your meeting, chances are you're going to be lost, and people are going to say, oh, I'd rather fund an education NGO. Now, reality is that education NGO, who may be operating in schools or non-formal education, may have a 20% attendance rate, whereas your programs may have a 90% attendance rate, and you may ensure that children who come through your program, as I heard from an NGO that works in surfing in Tamil Nadu, they ensure that the child actually attends school 6 days a week in order to surf on Sundays. So I think it's really critical that we start making the linkages of how your programs are actually adding to the 220 million youth that are going to be employable by 2023, and how your programs are going to get them jobs because they actually have a steady stream of mentors. They have a program that they participate in every week, and through sport, you're able to teach education, health, sexual reproductive health, gender equality, et cetera, versus just saying that you're a Sports for Development program. And I think this is something, especially in emerging markets, we are guilty about, because the funders we approach clearly are more concerned about health and education, as all of you. But I think it's important for you to change your positioning and your messaging to really reflect again on what the person opposite the table is looking at sort of funding, versus perhaps going into the details of how you teach football once a week and how that football over time may do X, Y, and Z. So I think I'll leave it sort of at that. But for those of you guys who have had a chance to look at a report, Dasra published a report on power of play in conjunction with the Australian Sports Outreach Program. I think it's critical that you guys use that report, use the statistics in that report to actually bring more credibility for Sports for Development. Clearly, there is a need for this to occur. This is the best and most proven model of engaging youth globally, but it's up to us as an NGO sector to really start talking about the linkages to health, employability, and education versus just talking about sport, because otherwise the CSR people will not fund what you guys are trying to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Deval. And in fact, we've got a question right up for you. So you can take this from Preetha. You can just read out the question and give her an answer.
Sure. So the question is, what is the investment model you created to sell S4D to corporates? I really think, again, it's the linkage to impact. And I think we're concerned as NGOs many times not to sort of talk about the impact until after it occurs. But to give you an example, 3 years ago when Dasra published a report on toilets and sanitation, this was something that most people in the country back then did not want to speak about, especially philanthropists. Philanthropists typically, as you guys know, want to put their name on something, and the last thing a philanthropist would want to do is put their name on a toilet. We were able to sell that circle and get philanthropists engaged and excited about that topic because we showed the linkages of how the number one reason of girls dropping out of school in our country is lack of toilets. Therefore, if you care about education, you should fund toilets. Or 1,600 children die every single day in India before turning the age of 5 because of diarrhea diseases. Again, number one link is lack of sanitation in toilets. So I think it's critical for each of you guys to really show a link to whether it's MDG goals, whether it's what the corporate cares about, or what's in the interest of the country, and demonstrate how your program actually helps in fulfilling those goals versus just getting youth on a field. But I think be confident that you can make that translation and start talking in those terms, because otherwise it's the education programs which may have 20% attendance that gets funded versus your programs that have 90% attendance.
Please write your questions and raise your hands, all right? Next, we'll have Parul. I'll do a bit of a googly and not Biren. So please wake up and write your questions and raise your hands. We want to, please push them with very creative questions.
I feel people are not lively, or
yeah, we need to kind of enliven them a little bit, Parul.
I feel that there's no, you are all sports persons. Get on, guys. Hey, guys. Well, thank you so much, Magic Bus and everybody. I think the great panelists here. But thank you so much for inviting me. And what I want to challenge you guys is basically the fundamental question that why sports? As Devan was saying that, sports, I'm saying why sports? Because what's happening is when you talk about the whole pedigree of our families, we are not concentrated on sports. India, because of our whole issue of livelihood, I think a lot of people are struggling with their livelihood of food, shelter, and livelihood and clothes. The thinking is, why sports? Why sports is definitely, that's a question you should be asking yourself and also, the panelists, because we as consultants will give you very, very great answers about it. But the thing is, are you convinced with those answers? That's a big question. The thinking is, what is missing is the aspiration of the parents to the children. The aspiration of the schools. We have no aspirations. How many people agree with me that, on the aspirations perspective of schools and children, do you have aspirations? You have great aspirations from your children, but you have no aspirations from the schools. The thinking is, can we match those aspirations at that budding level, at the cutting edge level when your child goes to school? And that's the whole school has to create an ecosystem. And that education is basically, education and sports go hand in hand. And I was talking to the whole, lot of panelists and also our participants here. The thinking is, today, if you don't have sports in your curriculum, in your education curriculum, that education is meaningless. So investment, you talk about investment, the development of a child is we have to see what are the main, contributors or ingredients of good education. That's the whole issue. So I'm asking those things, and I'm mindful of the time. Nikhil, definitely I'll abide with it. But the thinking is that, are we really thinking of that aspiration, and are we really working on those aspirations? And when we are investing in education, and I want to challenge companies here also that, when you think of investing in education, sports is part of education. So don't think that, you're giving your 2% or more than 2% to the, investing in society. The investment on society is on education, and sports is part of education. And there is definitely a business sense here. And when there is, if you look at the whole, youth aspiration, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, I'm talking about the age group, 6 to 9, 9 to 14, and 14 to 18. Different age groups have different aspirations. The sports should be part of your entire curriculum. And if sports is not part of the curriculum, a lot of these issues, nations are struggling with obesity. Countries are really struggling with the whole issue of how they should really bring that, active sports, active life in children. And a lot of these companies are struggling with all. So there is an ecosystem defect. And if there is a defect, we have to really think of that development will not be holistic if we will not invest in sports. So my thinking is to say that, sports is integral part of your entire development, and development cannot happen without sports. So it's a very correlated terminology to say that sports is part of the whole ecosystem and we have to invest in sports. That's one. The second is how many people today
1 minute.
are really thinking of, making career out of sports. There's a big issue. If my child goes and says that, I want to, for my life, I want to only play tennis, I will feel, what will happen? The thinking is that's a problem of our mindset. That's a problem with our behavioral. And that's the whole issue we have to change. And somebody was, the government has to also understand the aspiration of youth. If they are not understanding the aspiration of youth, somewhere we are not understanding the whole objective of nation building. And that's what we are really thinking about. If that investment is not possible, there will be no investment or there will be no development for this country or any other country which is not investing in sports. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Somebody has just
we have a question for you. Yeah. So you can just read it aloud.
No, there was another question. Somebody was asking that, is there any program at the grassroots level or a village level where government is investing into it? So Arun Kumar Ojha had asked this question. There is Ministry of Youth and Sports have a good program for panchayat level sports. And I don't remember the name of the, Paika. And the principal secretary sports today is struggling. His performance is in real danger because of that entire issue of Paika is not picking up. So please contact the principal secretary of Government of India and go and present your credentials, and he will or she will be interested to fund you. So that's what the whole thinking will be. That was a question, and I have answered that.
The one which is on that piece of paper which I just gave you.
Answered.
Yeah.
Then it is great to see corporate sector come forward and support sports, but what are they doing to
I just mentioned the name and the organization also, Parul.
This is Rashi Kakkar.
Rashi, I think, she's pretty proactive there.
Yeah.
That's the second question, good.
Yeah. So I think we are doing a lot of work with the governments in various countries because of my global work.
12 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. So you support sports, but what are you supporting to promote a healthy lifestyle amongst your own very employees? Like, I've been a consultant. I know how consulting.
Yeah. So I there are 2 points to it. Right?
She's got you
it's a
there.
good question.
Yeah.
The thinking is personal liability versus the organizational liability. We can drop you home, but the issue of going to for walks or making maintaining your lifestyle is your prerogative. But definitely the companies like ours are doing a lot in saying that we want to engage them on Saturdays, Sundays for football, for cricket, for so many things. We are giving you avenues. The issue is how you want to take those avenues and work on it. That's the personal obligation. So I don't want to go deep into the personal obligation of.
But thanks, Parul. But then that's a good bite question. We want more of those kind of questions so that we can put the panelists to a little bit of a task. In fact, we have a question for Anita here. I gave you that question, huh? Can you just, so who could take this? No, this was one from the Norwegian lady there. Yeah, you can take this one? Yeah, all right. Can you just read it aloud?
When you're creating events for youth, are they involved in the process? Make sure that the interests are covered. How are you evaluating your projects and their results? I can give you 2 live examples. When I said...
That's the lady there in blue, huh? Over there.
Oh, hi.
Very
Very
good
good
question.
question because
Yeah, because she's asked the question as
because
to how
when
you
we
design
speak
the
of
process.
CSR,
The process. is
you
it?
know, in sports, we already mean how can you measure it? You know, that's the first question. But I would like to say that in India, where we are at a very developing stage, and in most of the visions which we have written for at least 3 years, we said let's spread the sports. So right now, most of the corporates, the federation, the NGOs, I think they are looking for participation. So when you know, evaluation and the, you know, spreading out are done mostly through you know, organizations like Magic Bus who are involving. But what we are doing is in the team, I can speak for Reliance and IMG, and at the federation, we are taking a lot of youth as sports management consultants, giving them jobs. When we are doing school leagues and college league, we are going and speaking to them. What do they want? Because mind you, the students are very intelligent. You just can't go and give them a model. So there has to be a check and a balance. So we are doing that, but I'll be very frank. Right now, the whole idea is to spread out, and then maybe after 3-4 years, when you come back and we have the same debate, I'll be able to give you maybe reports on how we have measured. But right now, the idea is just to spread, but participation, yes. So, you know, there are a lot of, I mean, the average age of, excluding me, of my team, whom MGR is 34. So right from 21 to, these are the people who are doing planning with me. They're going out to the field. And I don't know if Suvrat is here, if he can stand up from All India Football Federation, who is heading the, he's not here, from grassroots program. He's 28, running the grassroots program All India. So we are involving youths to, you know, implement the programs. Thank you.
So thanks a lot. So let's have Biren. You can take the mic and make a presentation. And in fact, for you, we've got a question before you speak. Please. She said no, anyone, so
yeah, sure.
I had asked her to specify.
So
but
I'll respond to that question after I make this short presentation.
Correct.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have a very short presentation of sports at Tata Steel and how that is part of our CSR. More than 100 years back, and this is what, when Jamshedpur was being built, this is what Jamshedji Tata wrote to his son, that while planning for the city, be sure there are plenty of spaces for sports, football, hockey, etc. And hence it is very much part of the thinking and the philosophy at the Tata Group. Not many of you would know that Sir Dorabji Tata was the first president of the Indian Olympic Association way back in 1924. And before that, he had actually sponsored few athletes to the 1920 Olympics. At Tata Steel, we use sports in a multiplicity of ways. Someone mentioned earlier that sports is a great form of engagement. So we have a huge facility, which is the JRD Tata Sports Complex at Jamshedpur, and several training centers and feeder centers at all the mining and greenfield locations wherever we are present. Community sports, and Rashi had asked this question earlier about how do you do sports at a grassroots level, and especially with the kids. And we run football tournaments for the community youth, especially in Jharkhand and Odisha. And mind you, these are difficult areas to work, especially in the context of left-wing extremism. So annually we have a huge football tournament at the grassroots level for under 14 kids, in which more than 20,000 youth participate in that single tournament. Last year we had 1,250 teams participating in this tournament. And it's just not an event. We have coaches from our Tata Football Academy who go around scouting for talent and then ensuring that someone or the other gets into the academy. Very recently we started supporting hockey, and this is entirely in the Naxalite districts of Jharkhand, because there are certain areas in Jharkhand and Odisha which are cradles of hockey, and we thought this is a sport that needs a lot of support, and so we've just started work on hockey. Just some photographs of community engagement. Again, the states where we are present are again populated by indigenous people, and they have a natural flair for athletics and archery as well. So while on the one hand, we use sports as a tool for engagement, but also in the same breath, we also want to pursue excellence. So we have the Tata Football Academy, the Tata Athletics Academy, and the Tata Archery Academy, which in fact is really raising the Indian flag at international events. The Indian contingent for archery at the London Olympics, more than 75% of that contingent were all products of the Tata Archery Academy.
1 minute.
Deepika here in this photograph, she is world number either 1 or 2. She keeps fluctuating between 1 and 2 at the international level, and she is currently a cadet of the Tata Archery Academy. We also have the Adventure Foundation headed by Bachendri Pal, who was the first Indian woman to climb Mount Everest. And we use this adventure program to promote leadership and sports among the youth, especially among the community. And in the last 3 years, we have put 6 people on Mount Everest as if it was a backyard activity, including 1 tribal girl and 1 amputee from Lucknow who climbed Mount Everest earlier this year. I will skip through all this, and this is something which, to answer the question raised by the Norwegian lady, sorry, I didn't get your name. We use the community, and especially the tribal community, to promote, and I dare say, one of the few companies, surely in India, but I would also go around to say maybe in the world, to promote indigenous tribal sports. And many of them were long dead and buried, and we've literally revived them from the grave. And this sport is called Kati, and it is played by the Santhal tribes in Kolhan region of Jharkhand and also in some districts of Bengal. And we have actually found mentions of these sports in some archives, in some diary, and revived these sports. One of them is Sekod.
Time up.
There is Ramdale. Last slide. Chur.
30 seconds.
And
okay,
Bahuchor. And really, Bahuchor is not an adult sport. It is not about stealing someone's wife. It's a relatively innocent sport. Yeah, so from the part of the country where I come from, a very warm johar to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Biren. So, Biren, we'll just rewind to the question that the lady at the back asked. Could you just do that again, ma'am?
Yeah, sorry. I remember the question about how do you promote family values, and I'll take one more question which you raised about how do you promote healthy lifestyle among your own employees. Well, we have a whole program called Wellness at Workplace at Tata Steel, and this reaches out to all employees of Tata Steel, both officers as well as employees, starting with awareness about healthy living and also promoting healthy living. So for example, dealing with lifestyle issues like diabetes, blood pressure, heart attacks, those type of issues. Many of our senior management carry what is called, I don't know what's called, it's called a walkometer, and it measures the number of steps that you have taken in a day. So there is a lot of initiatives for wellness at workplace. To answer your question at the back, how do you promote family values through sports? Well, we don't do it through sports, but we have a program, and I would like to share, if you permit me. This is called as moral rearmament, as opposed to nuclear disarmament. This is a Gandhian movement, started off in Panchgini in Maharashtra, and we work with moral rearmament to instill moral values among youth, especially the community youth, and especially from the tribal community. And this is entirely based on the premise that be the change you want to see in the world, and look inwards and self-introspect. And when you look inwards, a lot of things come out, the good, the bad, the ugly. And what is good, you leverage on all the good part of it, and all that is not so good, you take some pledge and commitment to improve upon that. And through that process, this is a very potent tool and very strong tool for transformation, for leadership building. And in the last 2.5 years, we have had more than 3,000 rural youth, and even some urban youth, but largely rural youth and predominantly tribal youth, go through this program. And now they are becoming ambassadors of change and social change agents in their communities. So just to answer your question. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Biren. A big round of applause to him. Anita, you take the mic next, but while you take the mic, a couple of questions are there with Eric. So one is you have a piece of paper there. So if you could just repeat that question and the name and the organization of the person.
But it says, can you talk a bit about the model of CSR you are following with Udayan Care, which is the group that I mentioned. What does it involve? Financial support, co-creation of programs, or free of charge products such as shoes, apparel, and sporting equipment? Yes, yes, and yes. It's across the board. I think it started with this mentorship where it was really interaction with employees, with the kids. It then grew into doing these annual sports days, which has become a really big event for the kids. Now it's developing into a couple different things. Number one, I mentioned that I want to start employing some of these kids. These kids come all the way through the program, and as I've interacted with the kids, there's really impressive kids who, once they come out of this support environment, their opportunities are potentially limited. So we want to give some of these kids the chance to come into a professional environment, initially as interns, then hopefully as full-time employees. One other interesting example where we've provided support, some of these kids have extreme talent. So we have one kid, a young lady who had attention deficit disorder, but was a very gifted runner. So she started training and she qualified for the Special Olympics in Newcastle, Australia in December. She won a gold medal in the 200 meter and she won a bronze in a relay race. And now she's training for the global Special Olympics that are going to take place in the UK. So we're obviously supporting her and sponsoring her there. So it's any number of ways. I think the folks at Udayan Care know that any help they need from a sports standpoint, we're there for them.
Yeah, Eric, I just wanted to add one thing, a question, because when I'm reading your profile, you were with the Adidas group in China. So, in fact, from the IICA, we would be very keen to understand from you, because China has shown phenomenal performance improvement in sports from one Olympic to the other, and maybe you've been privy to some of that processes. If in any way we at the IICA can collaborate with you, because we are making policies for CSR. So there are 16,000 companies, by the way, which are now qualifying for CSR, 16,000 companies. There are 9 lakh companies registered under the Companies Act as on date. Out of them, 16,000 qualify out of the 3 criteria, which is either you need to be a 1,000 crore turnover company, or a 500 crore net worth company, or a 5 crore net profit company. There's an or in between, not an and. So this is equal to 16,000 companies. Then we apply the formula of 2% of average net profit, of profit before tax. This amounts to about 25,000 crores per annum starting from April this year. So we at the IICA are rolling out massive training programs for all these companies, right from director level people to CSR heads to the program managers. We are launching a 9-month CSR certificate program also from June this year. It will be the first program of its kind. So while we are making policies, we are making a policy template, because every company now has to make a CSR policy. This policy will inform CSR spending. So those companies which may like to include sports as part of CSR spending, and they want social returns on investment, where performance would be a huge thing. Can we learn from your experience in China, for example?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, China's probably not the best example in terms of using sport for development. Although we often think of the Chinese as being extremely good athletes, especially in the Olympic arena, the actual government support for sports is very focused on a very few athletes and raising world-class athletes. So if I were to advise the Indian government, my advice would be not to go down the Chinese route, but to do exactly the opposite and spread sports more broadly to the population.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here today, folks, to give you a different type of business model. I think we've heard the traditional aspect of CSR, and maybe I can just start off by asking how many of you in the room have heard of TOMS or have a pair yourselves? Okay, not bad. So that means that some of you should recognize this gentleman behind me. His name is Blake Mykoski. Started TOMS about 8 years ago, so his name is not Tom. But he got the idea when he was working in Argentina. He had just been down there for a visit. He saw an NGO giving out shoes to children who didn't have any. And he had the thought, what if there was a way that I could give shoes to these children repeatedly? So the entire idea for the business actually came from the giving, sort of backwards from what most people think. So what he did was purchase a lot of shoes in an alpargata style that is very common to Argentina, sold them with the promise that every pair that he sold, he would donate a new pair of shoes to a child in need, 1 for 1. So with that concept, I can tell you what then started is now really boomed into a social movement across much of the United States and all over the world. I'm sure if you don't know about the brand, if you asked your younger cousin, niece, or nephew, they could certainly tell you something about it. The organization is a for-profit company with social impact, as I mentioned, very much at its core. And because of the simple idea that it started on, it has now been almost a model for a lot of people to copy, and they're very excited about that because, of course, imitation is the best form of flattery, but also because we want that mission to be furthered. So if you have an idea of what this is, the retail shoes that you see down here on the bottom left would then translate to being able to give a shoe to a child in need.
Shrikant, maybe we could dim some of those lights over there, I guess. Is that possible? Yeah, sure. Because I think it's not all that visible from the back.
And the reason why I'm excited to share this with you is because it's not your traditional model, right? Most organizations have a foundation that's off to the side that does its work somewhat separately. Here, the giving does not happen without the retail does not happen without the giving. So that's something that I'm really excited to show you, and also to let you know that since about last July, so over the first 6 or 7 years, the company's been able to give away 1 crore, 10 million shoes around the world. And we're excited to say that we're on track within the next 12 months to give another 10 million pairs of shoes, education programs to get off the ground. So whether it's an athletic program, a way for children to play sports in a very safe manner, or a way to incentivize children to come to a deworming camp, or to actually get them to come to school. We've seen that the shoes have been a small tool, a very small piece of a much bigger puzzle that our giving partners are able to partake in. The organization serves in over 60 countries around the world with over 100 partners, and we work with the organizations who are on the ground, who know the needs, and these are the NGOs who actually do the heavy lifting. It's very sustainable programming. It's not like the organization comes and hands a bunch of shoes and say, hey, have a good time with that. There's a lot of financial support that's provided. It's also folks like me who will guide them through the process. If there's customs involved, logistics involved, and it's also very much a sustainable thing. We don't give just once. We try to give as often as the organization likes, up to every 6 months. So whatever they dictate is required for their community, we try and serve. The giving models, as I mentioned, are various, and it depends on the communities at hand. Health and education are, of course, the 2 primary pillars, but we've increasingly seen that programmatic needs can very much be served through shoes. So if it's even requesting mothers to join a microfinance program or maternal health programs, using shoes is almost a carrot. It's been incredibly interesting to see that come to fruition. And job creation, of course, is a major one that we've been able to promote through local economies and investing in local manufacturing. This is, of course, something that many people ask. Why are you importing shoes from a different country? Why can't you promote shoes locally? I'm very proud to say that all of our shoes that we're giving in India are made in factories here. So we promote local jobs, we're able to support factories, and of course, promote the idea of wearing shoes in the first place. And by the end of next year, we're hoping that the goal is 1/3 of the local manufacturing will actually be done in country, including a new factory that will be opening this April in Haiti. So I'd like to give you an example of what we're giving, actually. So we used to give just the canvas shoes that you see up there on the corner, but now, because of the demand from our partners that we work with, very excited to be able to say we now have winter boots. We have school uniform shoes like these that we're giving in India, that many of you may have worn to school yourselves, and excited to show for this audience particularly athletic shoes, which we're giving in certain organizations where it makes a lot of sense, and eventually, very soon, we'll be having wet weather shoes for the monsoon season. So this is something I think all of you would be very excited about, as we are, as we understand how critical sports can be to a child's life. If there's a way that they can play safely, not injure themselves, and be very proud and feel like an actual team player with a pair of shoes on. I'd love to show you a quick video, actually right now, that shows some of the giving that we are doing in the United States. So along with all the countries that we serve around the world, very proud to be able to serve those in our own backyard who require some assistance.
The thing that makes me most proud about the work that Save the Children does is going to be the particular emphasis on serving kids in the hardest to reach areas, particularly in the rural parts of the United States. And so we're really meeting a need that no one else is focusing on. Save the Children is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to inspire breakthroughs in the way the world treats children and create real and lasting change in their lives. We do literacy, physical activity, as well as summer boost camps across the country.
we're encouraging these kids to get out, to play, to be active. So you need a good pair of shoes.
The shoes that Tom's has provided Save the Children are a sports shoe. These are the first time these shoes will be given out in the United States to children. This summer and early into the start of the new school year, we'll be repeating the process across Kentucky.
I think some of the kids heard that we were getting shoes, but to some of them it was a complete surprise. When they got their new shoes on, they immediately wanted to start running and jumping.
Most importantly, it enables them to just being a kid, putting all the other worries aside.
I mean, it's just unlimited what the kids are capable of, provided that they have the support, provided that people care about them and take an interest in them. You know, they can do anything.
I can probably make up for time by answering the question and finishing my presentation. How
Correct.
about that? So the question here was, since Tom's doesn't do retail in India, what is the motivation behind Tom's giving in India? Fantastic question. So I think that really speaks to the core of the business, which is not always about the bottom line, but really about what's best for the communities that we're serving in. So you're right, we don't do retail in India at this point in time, and in most of the countries that we give in, we're not doing retail. But it's a matter of which communities have the most need and how can we deliver it as best as possible. And a great example of that is actually a couple other models of giving that have come out. For example, 1 for 1 with eyewear. So for every pair of sunglasses that are being sold, we're now doing cataract surgeries. Marketplace is a great example. One World Football is featured on this website, where leveraging the Tom's brand is now able to have an entire online marketplace to sell different goods from social enterprises. So it's not limited to just shoes. It's not just limited to sunglasses or cataract surgeries. It's really about how can we take the concept of social enterprise, leverage the entire company, and really challenge the idea of corporate responsibility. Well, with that, I'll end, and thank you for your time.
All right. Thanks a lot, Anita. So in fact, we now have about 10 minutes left to 3:30. So maybe a little more than that. But there are already a couple of questions with each of the panelists. So what I'll do is I'll start from one corner, and if we are able to get through these, they can then have some mics across the audience so that no writing further. The purpose of you guys writing all this while was to keep the panelists also on their toes. Now that we have some kind of energy flowing across, and we have about 10 minutes, let's utilize that time and not to waste any further. Let's get started with Parul.
Yeah, there's a question from Anuradha. On do you think making sports a part of curriculum in schools, colleges be an attractive proposition for CSR? Yes, that's what we are trying to see, that, you know, if CSR can be inclusive, it should be more of inclusive development than, you know, just to say that sports is not part of the curriculum. So definitely we are advising our clients to make sports as part of their curriculum, and also talk about quality education and inclusive education for better impact. So that's my question on this. Devil, do you want to add something? Yeah, okay. The other question is, what advice do you have for a young 1 year to 3 years sports for education and organization looking to tap into CSR funding? Chicken egg problem, organization needs to scale to demonstrate impact, they need funds to scale CSR decision making and all that. Akshay Ibrahim, Project Kale.
Can the person raise their hand, please, because that will make some sense? Yeah, at the back, right at the back.
You know,
has the question been read correctly? All right, good.
Okay. So my question will also go to you, because I want to further ask you a question. It's saying that, you know, what is your capacity of your organization? Because when you talk about fundraising and resource mobilization, first of all, we have to see from a company's perspective, you're thinking about how do you want to roll that program out? Because if you have a good program, as we are all saying, there's no problem of funding. There's no dearth of funding. There's so much funding available. But we have to also demonstrate a good model. So first of all, it depends on the model, the impact, the capacity of people, and also the capacity of people to operate from that ground zero or that project. So my advice will be definitely to the organization to see that, you know, if you want to work on that program, A lot of people will be interested, but we have to showcase your strength and credentials on that.
All right, you've taken all yours. So I think what I'm also requesting the panelists, because each one of them has got 3 or 4 questions, just read through your questions. If you have a common answer to all of them, we again get to save some time. So Eric, you have a couple of questions, or you're done with yours? You have one?
Here. So this is a question from Sandeep. It says, what can Adidas learn/leverage from Tom's? Is it a threat to its business model?
So they've put the 2 panelists against each other.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm a big fan of Tom's, and I think the model is fantastic. It's obviously a different model than we have here. We also donate a tremendous number of shoes. I think last year alone in India, tens of thousands of shoes, which in our case would have been excess inventory that I couldn't sell in the market. We very quietly donated. When we had the horrible floods in Uttarakhand, I sent a bunch of shoes up there. See, one of the things, and this is related to a different question that someone raised, there's a bit of cynicism when brands like ours do this. Now, I think the Tom's model is brilliant as a fundamental part of the business model. Unfortunately, sometimes when a company like Adidas donates, it's viewed as being a marketing ploy and a brand activity. So one of the things that I'm very careful of is we actually don't publicize any of this. Virtually everything that we do is completely unpublicized for exactly that reason. First of all, it's not the purpose we're doing it, is to seek publicity. But also, unfortunately, there's a fair amount of cynicism when brands tend to do this. One other point, a separate point related to this question. There was an interesting program that Adidas did globally a couple of years ago. I don't have an update on it, but we worked with Mohammed Yunus, the founder of Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, to develop a €1 shoe. Again, it was a non-branded shoe. It had nothing to do with Adidas branding. But that was a big program that we did along with Grameen a couple years ago.
Thank you, Eric. Preeti, you have a couple of questions. So try and be very brief in about a minute's time, maybe maximum.
Question is from Mr. Nautiyal. A very good question. How to address the sports needs of the children studying in small schools having no access to sports fields, particularly in crowded cities and walled cities. This is a challenge we all are facing. I can just give 2 live examples. Something when we wanted to cover 50,000 schools in collaboration with NBA. The whole idea was to cover the states, Maharashtra and Kerala, in 3-4 years, and we never specified. We said we'll go to smaller cities. So, we are being innovative by every, step we are going, because this is a question. So what we are telling the schools who have fields, that we'll do portable basketball courts, or we'll set up, and we'll have flexible timings. For the school, the separate timings, then we are trying to tie up with the NGOs in that cities to try and get other kids who have no access. Now, the challenges are very clear. Since it's a CSR program, there's also a related question: why doesn't media write about it? How to communicate to your target audience, and how to reach out to these people. So schools are a very, very big partnership, gold mine, if I may call them. So we are trying to escalate, reaching to all the children who don't have sports field through the schools. And I hope it works.
So that covers all your this thing? Any other pending with you? Deval is now next. You have?
Yeah, there was another. This is done. Something, why media doesn't, there was a question.
Yeah, there was a question on the media thing, why, I think.
Media, somebody wants to answer, so.
Anyone can take that, anybody can take that.
I think let him take, he has more experience on media than me, so.
So Biren can take that maybe.
I'll take, there's another one which I'll take.
Traditionally, media has not been covering positive stories, especially on CSR. But things are changing. We see more and more coverage of CSR in mainstream media. There are some publications which cover only these issues. I think civil society or EPW and many such, they cover issues in the developmental space. I can answer for myself. In a previous avatar, I used to be a journalist with NDTV. And we had evangelized a program called Beyond Business, which used to come on NDTV Profit. And I used to anchor that program. And this looked at CSR initiatives of companies which were beyond their bread and butter. And not just companies, even some NGOs and bureaucrats. So yes, traditionally the media has not been covering positive CSR developmental stories, but in light of the New Companies Act, the growing importance of CSR, the growing stakeholder activism, I think there is more and more space now, and as we go along, you will see more of it in the near future.
Thanks, Biren. Deval, your set of questions, please.
Sure. So I have one, which is how excited are you about the CSR bill, and how much would be, I guess, allocated for S4D programs? I think very excited. Again, 18 to 25,000 crores is statistics that are given. It's phenomenal.
Right.
Traditionally, according to Bain and Company, I think 2 years ago, annual giving to this sector was about $6 billion. So this can increase giving to this sector by 50%, which is phenomenal. I think clearly organizations are going to will need to demonstrate that they have the absorption capacity to use these funds. Otherwise, corporates may end up owning and operating their own programs solely and not funding organizations like Magic Bus and others. So I think it's important to demonstrate how you guys have plans, how you can absorb capital, how you can scale. In terms of what's sort of will be allocated for S4D programs, again, I sort of think it's important to realize that if you have a linkage to education or health, I think